Welcome to Let's Wine. Today we're launching a very special series of 3 episodes called First in Line, and it's inspired by our great guest, Felicia Travaillot, and her nickname, Felixandra the Great. Welcome. Over the next 3 episodes, you're going to hear about a story that doesn't get told often enough. The story of Feli, a woman who made it all the way to the C-suite, being now a CMO, and who have to overcome many hurdles with no mentors, no roadmap. In the first episode, Feli and I are going to talk about the importance of building a career in the C-suite in a male-dominated industry and the challenges that she overcame while being a mom, being a young professional and building her career throughout the years. Episode 2, we're going to talk about how we support each other and how we don't in many ways. And episode 3, it's one of my favorite and the most personal one for both of us. We're going to talk about a subject that is sort of taboo, which is perimenopause. And it will be full of insights, laughter, and a lot of glasses of wine. Let's wine. Welcome to another episode of Let's Wine, the podcast where we share good conversations, we uncork good wine, and we share many glasses of wine. Today, I have the privilege of welcoming my friend and a very special guest, CMO and industry leader, Felicia Travaillot. Welcome, Feli.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. This is such an honor.
Oh my God, we're so excited. We have so many stories to share with our audience today. But before, since this podcast is about owning the conversation and sharing a glass of wine, so let's see what we're drinking today. I know this is one of your favorite wines, rosé.
Yes.
So cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to you, to your career, and to what you've built throughout the years. What an amazing story you have, Feli.
I'm excited to share it with everybody.
Yes. Well, cheers. Let's see how this rosé is. This is a rosé from the French southern region. So it will be interesting to see how it carries out our conversation.
I think it's going to do a great job. I already feel it.
That's right. So Feli, you were a marketing associate at the beginning of your career. What's the journey like from marketing associate to a CMO now?
Feels like it was a very long journey. I started out in the finance industry, interestingly enough, as marketing associate, and then I moved into production at Warner Brothers. From there, I moved into Sony Electronics and varying industries, but it is where I learned the mechanics of marketing, the foundations of marketing. And along that journey, I got my master's degree. And then after a decade at Sony Electronics, I was laid off and I found my way back into finance again, only on the tech side. So almost 10 years now in fintech. And it has been an interesting journey, a lot of learnings, a lot of missed opportunities as well. But those learnings are what I am trying to pivot into coaching and mentoring learnings for others. So that is my goal.
Yeah. And in the process, you also became a mom.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Became a stepmom too.
Became a stepmom. I have a daughter. She's 13 now, Chloe. And unfortunately, I did go through a divorce. So that was a difficult part of my life. But I did find a wonderful partner today that I have now, and he has 2 sons. So I was able to have the 2 boys that I never had. So we have a beautiful family of 3 kids, and I have a wonderful husband, and I'm very happy.
That's amazing. And Feli, how do you do it all? Because it's and I brought up the fact that you're a mom because it's not just the career. It's dealing with coworkers and bosses who are not the best fit sometimes for who we are or the stage that we're in our careers. It's dealing with kids growing up and becoming teenagers. It's dealing with partners or husbands or spouses. How do you manage it all?
Sometimes I take a step back, and as I'm hearing you say that, I actually ask myself, how have I done it? I think you just kind of work through it. You're in the moment, and I'm a person that just gets things done. I'm always moving. I'm always solving. I'm always on top of things, and I'm never a person that stands still. Does it mean that you have to be that type of person to do it all? No. but that's just my personality. And highly adaptable person, and I'm very goal oriented. So I'm always focused on making sure my house is in order, my kids are in order, my job is in order, and then traveling all the time. It's just a matter of getting things organized, right, and being on top of all the to-do lists.
Yeah, and I have the privilege of calling you friend for many years now, and I know that we share our love wine.
Yes, we do. This is dangerous.
Yeah, actually. Yeah. So since this is a podcast where we have a conversation, but we also talk about wine.
I do love Malbec. It is one of my favorite wines. I don't drink red wine often.
Only with me.
Only with you. Yeah, it's a requirement.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So going back to that young associate, what was the hardest lesson that you learned during those first years?
Well, the first boss that I ever had was a woman. And this was my first job out of college. And she was very intense and not very nice. I was fresh out of college. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't really have a career path I never made a plan for where I wanted to work, what industry. I just took the first job that accepted me. And I think one of the toughest lessons, I was very soft, and I think to this day, I wear my heart on my sleeve. I think everybody knows that. And I was very sensitive, and she was very harsh. And I found myself crying in her office multiple times. It's a no-no in the corporate world, right? But I look back at those moments, and those were very cringeable moments for me, but I was also very inexperienced, very naive. I'm a late bloomer, so I went through those difficult lessons. And then moving into the Warner Brothers world in production, I continued to encounter difficult bosses. That also made me cry in their offices. And so I just never had that one person to really just take me by the hand and say, toughen up, kind of get yourself together, understand this is how this works, this is how you do. I didn't have that. So I was kind of just like a lost puppy in the world, trying to find my way. And that was very scary at times. And I didn't really know, am I just here to get a paycheck, or am I, growing my career? I didn't know back then. It was all very murky for me.
Right. And then you moved on to work for a major multinational, Asian multinational. Yes. And then you move into the fintech space. That it's a space that is very male dominated. Yes. That's just a fact.
Oh yeah.
What do you learn from those years at those companies and dealing, because you talk about being sensitive, having feelings, and that's seen as something negative.
Yeah.
For us women, especially. Yeah. How do you learn to navigate that time?
Well, interestingly, there is a phrase that really sticks out in my mind from those early years of not one, but multiple people that called it in my face when I was getting teary-eyed, and they would say, "Oh, are you going to cry now?" And just kind of made fun of me. And I think in those moments, listening to those kind of patronizing words were those moments that made me realize, get a thicker skin. You need to be better than this. You can't cry at work. You can't, so over time, I feel like I started developing that thicker skin. And then kind of when I was catapulted into Sony, and the Japanese are very much like the Hispanic world, right? They're, women are kind of less than. They're, Japanese, although they're very kind and they're very non-confrontational, but they still have a very hierarchical kind of society, and women are usually at the bottom. You didn't see women in the leadership roles. So I think part of hanging out with so many men made me a harder person, if that makes sense. Yeah. Just being around men all the time, to a degree that I feel like sometimes I am one of the guys. Like I have the personality and the humor of a guy, and I kind of hang out with the guys. And I think that kind of started making me model their way of doing business. And I was following suit. I was watching the men in my company do business and act in their roles. And I took those cues.
Yet you have kept your authenticity, Feli. Yeah, and that's something that not a lot of women. There are women in the industry, in many industries, that they just try to mirror behaviors of their male counterparts.
Yeah,
but you've kept that authenticity in you.
It's interesting because if there's something about me that, if people were to know me, I am just the social butterfly.
Yes, you are.
I'm known as a social butterfly. I'm friendly, I'm joking, I'm smiling. It takes a lot for me to get upset. And I think that part of my personality always shines through. But I have learned over the 10 years, specifically in Sony, I learned when certain moments called for that male kind of toughness, energy, let's call it. Times the male energy, right, to get things done, to feel like a little bit more respect from my counterparts. And then over time, I learned how to balance it out. When I could be my way, my authentic way, and when I needed to bring the male energy out, just to get things done. Sometimes, because you end up getting frustrated to the point where you're chasing after people, nobody listens to you, and your job is on the line. So when you start realizing your job is on the line, you need to make a decision, right? So you need to kind of pull out all the stops, and being the nice person isn't always going to get you everywhere, unfortunately.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But those learnings, Feli, also help you to reinvent, because you moved from Sony Corporation to a completely different industry.
Yes.
And it was such a reinvention, and it was in your late 30s, right?
No, early 40s.
Early 40s. So that's a big reinvention. How do you reinvent it? Because you completely had to learn a new industry.
Yeah.
New players.
Yeah.
And how the industry, it's an industry that over the past 10 years, specifically the time that you've been in the industry, has evolved very rapidly at a fast, particularly in the emerging markets, that is really hard to keep up with. But how do you reinvent yourself? Because you did.
That's an interesting question, and one that I love to talk about, because not everybody survives that transition.
Yes.
Because when you come from a background of working for multinational corporations like Sony, like Warner Brothers, the pace is very different. Marketing is very different. And the goals are very different. And then that pivot into the fintech world, I remember the first couple of months was a little bit of like cold water in the face, because I instinctively was trying to do things the way that I did them at Sony, but then I forgot, wait a minute, I don't have a brand name backing me. And this is a completely different type of marketing.
Yeah.
It was more roll up your sleeves, hands-on, very fast-paced, and very sales-oriented. And that's where I really feel that I started getting more of the strategic marketing experience and exposure, and connecting my marketing experiences from the past to more, how does marketing support sales? How do you support revenue growth? How do you support company growth? And thinking in those terms, right? And so through that period of, the last 10 years, going through that change, again, talking about adaptability and flexibility, that is something that I've always been able to do. I've just always been able to adapt and flex to my environment. And maybe that's due to the history that I have of all the moving that I've done in my life, and I've done moving at pivotal moments of my, development in my age, right? When I was 14, when I was 17, and that kind of shaped me to be able to be more flexible and adaptable in my career.
And it's interesting because not our audience, we have audience that comes from different backgrounds, and maybe they're not as familiarized with marketing, but in the fintech companies that you work for, you had different type of bosses that were not, yes, you had your bosses, but you had because most of the companies were backed by VCs or investors.
Yes. All of them.
Mm-hmm. So how do you present, because marketing has a big challenge when the companies are private and they're going through their financing rounds. What was your biggest lesson in terms of marketing, presenting to that other boss that is there, right? The venture capitalists were putting the money to fund the ventures.
Interestingly, I have been a couple of layers removed from that. right? In my first couple of fintechs. This is really now at Strategy Core, as a CMO, is where I've really gotten the exposure to, okay, I'm now presenting to my new bosses, which is a boardroom of people that was very intimidating. And my first one was a little bit, nerve-wracking, like I said, intimidating. But you really just have to understand what are they looking for? And, you have to think, what is their ultimate gain here? They invested money into this company and they want to see how they can get that return and then some. So my job is to make sure that I am reporting the right numbers, that I'm making that I'm hitting my right KPIs, my right targets. And so even right now to this day, my thoughts are always, we have to grow the company to, X number, X percentage in 3 years. We have 3 years. What am I going to do? How am I going to maximize my budget? How am I going to maximize the FTE headcounts that I have? How am I going to maximize my time? So I'm constantly thinking in these terms now. And then I have to translate that into how I report to the board.
To the board.
Yeah.
Another important aspect that we haven't talked about, how's the wine?
The wine is delicious, but I'm talking a lot.
So you at 20 years ago, you were an individual contributor.
Yes.
And as you evolved in your career, you also started acquiring team members.
Yes.
Different levels, different times. What has been the experience in terms of bringing somebody on board to work with you that has been the most challenging or the most rewarding?
So I actually started cultivating a team back in my so many days. And I found that mentoring and building a team was something that I absolutely love. More so because I've always been the kind of person that enjoys being that psychologist for people and that friend, that support system for people. I love helping people. That is my passion, especially younger people and, people that are coming up behind me. I never had that. I never had a mentor. I never had an instruction manual or a guide. I had to figure everything out on my own, and that made things difficult. So if I can be that, what I wanted for myself, for other people, it gives me no greater joy. And then more so to see those very people that I mentored succeeding in their own right just brings me incredible satisfaction. So that part of, it's a lot of work because you have your day to day and you are responsible for your, your results. And you are also responsible for a team. And that team, you have to coach them and guide them so that they're doing the work and also helping you reach your results. But at the same time, I put extra emphasis in being their support system. So, and I enjoy it.
And you're not only their support system while at the job, but I know, because we're talking offline, she gets like weekly calls from her former reports to continue that mentoring informally.
Yes, every week. They're all, if it's not, questions on where what job they should take or which path they should go or help on a particular project or just the simple, I miss you, Feli. And it's very endearing to me, but that's the legacy that I want to leave behind.
I just want to make an interjection here, and Feli, because I know you're an inspiration to many. Where can they find you, reach you in social media, LinkedIn?
Yeah. So you can reach me on my LinkedIn. I have also Instagram. I also have TikTok. And I'm actually starting to do a series on TikTok on women's health and perimenopause, which is not a subject that we talk about much, but I'm going to put a ton of light on it.
Oh, that's great. And that's going to be part of our series. So that's episode 3. More on that, because we're both facing that phase right now.
Yes, we are.
And Feli, well, cheers to you, to being the mentor and the inspiration.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. And actually, you're my mentor to me. You have been my mentor since the day that I met you.
Oh, honor.
And I actually have to say this because it's important. From the day that I met you, and a big part of my success in this industry has been because of you.
Oh, I'm honored, but it's all your merit. It's all your merit.
Thank you.
The fact that you're a CMO, for those of you that don't know, is the Chief Marketing Officer. It's a C-level position, so you report to a CEO.
Yes.
Yeah, which is amazing. But Feli, not everything is roses and wine, right? Um, you've had quite your share of difficult bosses, especially difficult women that
Yes.
you've dealt with.
Yes.
You share some insights and why that felt so personal. The fact that it was other women
Yeah.
not supporting you.
You know, I mentioned earlier about my first boss, who was a woman, and she was not sympathetic at all to the fact that I was just graduating college and starting my career. And she had zero patience for my inabilities. And looking back at a situation like that, had she actually taken the time to coach me and teach me, she probably could have made me a much better executive and a much better resource for her. Number one. Number two, for me, the fact that, women can just be treacherous at times to each other, right? And maybe not so extreme, but we can be difficult with each other. And it's a known thing. Even my daughter says, girls are just mean to each other, even in middle school, right? We're mean. It's extremely hurtful in the corporate world because we're already up against the glass ceiling, and we're already up against dealing with the male figure and the toxicity that comes with that, and the mansplaining and all of those wonderful little terminologies that we have to deal with today. And I think if anything, we have to stick together as sisters, right? And it's very common for people to have jealousies or backstab or competition. And I think healthy competition is good because it helps us level up. And I'm a fan of that. When that competition becomes toxic and we start backstabbing each other and we start dragging each other down, I don't feel like we should do that to each other. We're sisters in the corporate world, and we need to help each other up because certainly no one else is helping us up, and we have to fight against a lot of stigmas and that glass ceiling.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You could have not said it better. It's about supporting each other. It's uplifting each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's so hard to find nowadays because if we are not being the role models for our daughters, who is that? Right?
That's it.
Because they will be the ones entering the workforce in 10, 12 years.
Yeah.
They'll be entering the workforce.
That's right.
So they need to learn the lesson now.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, share with our audience, Feli the mom. Because I know you're the cool mom, but we both have teenagers, so it's hard. How's Feli the mom?
I am the cool mom. I'm not going to lie.
I know you are.
But it is a fine line that I teeter-totter on all the time because I still want to be cool and young and hip to my daughter, even though when I'm doing the TikTok dances, she's not having it. Mm-hmm. Her friends loving it, but she thinks I am just the most cringe person in the world.
Cringe. I learned that terminology.
Yes.
They have a new terminology now.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Rot words. So what is it? The brain rot. Yes. So she has, she loves though that, I've created an environment in a kind of a situation for her her and I to be very open with each other. I talk to her about everything, even the most taboo subjects, the most uncomfortable subjects, from, sex and things that are alcohol, drugs, all of these things. I'm very open with it. And I've removed that fear and that stigma. So I accidentally saw one day that she had written somewhere that I'm like her bestie and she can talk to me about everything. But I also have to manage that line because I'm not just your bestie, I'm also your mother. Mm-hmm. And there are certain expectations that I need her to have or that I need her to follow, like her grades, being a cleanliness, a clean, young adult, cleaning her room, being organized, being disciplined, all of those things that come with it. And she's hard-headed. She's a 13-year-old. And so I have to kind of come down on her sometimes. So I go back and forth, but overall, she is my best friend. I love her so much.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, she's very blessed to have you as a mom and as a friend.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And let's talk about somebody else who's not in the room, but it's your mom, who I have the privilege of knowing. mama, and she's um, um, a very young lady for her stamina and the level of stamina that she has. But I love your mom's story because I know her story has shaped a lot of who you are.
Yes.
And I would love for you to share a little bit about how mothers, the role that mothers played, that your mother in particular, but the role that we as mothers play in our kids' lives.
I love that you're bringing Mama up. Honestly, I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for her. Full stop. As a little girl, my mom was the breadwinner.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was around and he had his businesses, but my mom was the hustler. She had 3 businesses and, she was doing things in the 80s that most women didn't do.
Mm-hmm.
My dad would give her a hard time because she had to travel and go meet business associates and he was just not having it. Typical Hispanic macho mentality. So he held my mom back a lot. But one of the things that I remember doing as a young child is putting on her red lipstick, putting on her heels and grabbing her briefcase and pretending like I was going to work in a corporate office.
And now you're doing it.
And now I'm doing it, right? So I say that to her all the time. I'm like, Mom, I followed in your footsteps. I would play in her, she had an office in the house and she had all these checkbooks and things and I would go in and write on them and she would get so upset with me. But that was me modeling after her. This is what I learned. And she was a very strong woman. My mom's story is a whole nother story for like a month-long podcast. But her story is it's a great story of trial, defeat, and success.
Reinvention.
She is the mother of all reinventions. And I look at her today, widowed after my father passed away 15 years ago. And she's living her best life. And so I've learned all the good from her and some of the bad, but all mostly good. And so we as mothers, right, that's one of the things that I'm doing with Chloe now is it's true what they say, our children are our mirrors. And there's a lot of things of the bad things.
So Feli, what a journey. How many stories you've had. But there is something that I really want you to share with our audience, which is Felixandra the Great.
What is that? Okay, so I am obsessed with Alexander the Great. And if you've ever heard the story of Alexander the Great, he was not only one of the most amazing kings that conquered so many lands, but he was a king that was involved with his army. And usually kings will go to the front of the line and do their little pep talk, much like quarterbacks do their pep talk before the game, and then run with their horses up and down the line and then go to the back. And then all of their army would charge. Not Alexander the Great. He was right at the front. Life or death. He loved to fight, and he loved to fight with his army. And when I saw this documentary, it was on Netflix a few years ago, I said, wow, I feel like we're kindred spirits, Alexander the Great and I, right? Because, as much as I go up into more senior roles, executive roles, strategic roles, I can't help but my heart is always at the bottom. Not at the bottom, that's not what I mean to say, but, in the front lines with the team, in the trenches with the team. And in the fintech world, in the startup world, often we're very lean teams, right? And I'm very cautious and very concerned always for my team to make sure that their mental well-being is well, their physical well-being, that they're not overloaded, that we are prioritizing correctly. And if I have to go down to the trenches and, negotiate a hotel contract or make some content, then so be it. I will do it.
Yeah.
And we all share the load. It's not about me in my ivory tower directing. It's we share the load. And that's where I feel like a lot of leaders sometimes just get too in of themselves and they're just too good for that. And it's very hierarchical. I am the last person that will have hierarchy. I break those barriers, not only going down, but also coming up. Because one of the things I say to my team is, you don't need to go through me to talk to the CEO. As a matter of fact, you should talk to the CEO on a regular basis because the CEO needs to see what you're doing. They need to see you shine. They need to see you progressing because that is your path up. So I removed myself from that. I don't have insecurities about those things.
That's amazing. That's amazing, and that's a lesson that many women need to learn, right?
Yeah.
And Feli, this is we're celebrating Women's International Month this month. What's your word of advice for those women that have no roadmap? Or probably 23, 24, starting their careers, or maybe women who are in their 40s asking themselves, how do I reinvent myself? You've been through all these different stages, or women who are waiting for that promotion. Like you got your promotion to a C-suite. What word of advice do you have for them when they don't necessarily have their roadmap?
The same thing that I would have said to myself if I could go back to my 20-year-old self and say, hey, Feli, wake up, get a roadmap. There's nothing more important than to sit down and really strategize. Ask yourself those questions. What is it that I love to do? What are the industries that I love to be in? What are my passions? Because that's something I didn't do, right? Like I said earlier, I said yes because it was a paycheck, and in my brain in those time periods, it was, I have to pay the rent, I have to pay my car, et cetera, et cetera. I wasn't thinking about how saying yes to these particular roles was going to affect my career. Looking back, would I have jumped around so much? No. I would have picked something and mastered it. And I think I would have gotten further a lot sooner. But I will tell you, take a moment to sit down, and yes, you have to earn your paycheck, you have to make a living, but figure out, where do you want to go? Like, I ask this question to my team all the time, and I say, what do you want to do? Do you want to be in the product marketing world? Do you want to become a digital marketer, growth marketer? Do you want to go to the C-suite? There's so many avenues within marketing that you can go, but you need to figure that out, because you can be a generalist or you can be very specific. But you need to figure that out early on before you make a mistake and you end up somewhere that you don't want to. Mm-hmm. So that is my biggest advice, is just take a beat and figure that out. Just like you would write a brief plan for your campaign, write a brief plan for your career.
I love what you're saying, because it's building from strengths. Typically, most of us at the beginning of our careers, we start thinking about our weaknesses and not our strengths. And I think it's so important that we identify what we're really good at, what are our strengths, and build from strengths, not from weaknesses.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest and interesting lessons that I've had along the way is we're all just kind of faking it till we make it. And I used to think, when I was in my 20s and I would look up to the executive leaders in our company and the presidents and the CEOs, and I used to think, wow, they're really buttoned up. They really have it together. They know what they're doing. They're experienced. And I have to say, now that I'm in the C-suite and I'm sitting in on some of these executive meetings and talking to the board, and they don't know what they're doing either. We're A/B testing our way through life here. So I think taking away that stigma and that imposter syndrome and that fear, take all of that away. Everybody is just trying to figure it out. Nobody has it figured out. Mm-hmm. So don't feel that pressure, which is what I've carried throughout my whole career, is that imposter syndrome. And ironically, now that I'm in the C-suite, I don't have the imposter syndrome.
Oh my God, that's amazing. So how many executives in the C-suite of your company?
We're top heavy. I think we're up to, what is it now? 10 C-suite. Yeah.
Wow, yeah. That's amazing. So you're one of the 10.
One of the 10. And then what I love most is that our CTO is a female and our COO is also a female. So we have 3 female C-suites. Yeah.
Well, kudos to your CEO.
Yes.
For promoting and elevating women.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There is something that was not on the script and the notes, but it's talking about our heritage. You have a Hispanic heritage.
Yeah.
How has that made you different? Has it been an advantage, especially the language component?
Yeah. So, living in Miami, which is a melting pot of cultures and mostly Hispanic cultures, it's been obviously very helpful, right? Grew up Hispanic, speak 2 languages, picked up a third along the way, Portuguese. And, that the ability to be multicultural just opens up so many doors for you, not just in the Latin America region, which typically if you are Hispanic and you work in Miami, you can get pigeonholed into just Latin America. But the beauty of being multicultural, it just really opens up opportunities, not only to work in other regions, but to be flexible to other cultures, to understand that there are differences, to adapt to those differences. Whereas when you're just, singular in your culture, you're not used to anticipating those different, ways of living and cultures and ways of being. And you may have a little bit of a contrast, right? And kind of, blockage in working in a situation like that. So I think having that multicultural aspect really just helps you be more adaptable.
Yeah. And it's amazing, Feli, because you work with Asian culture, right? You work with the European culture, with the Latin American culture, American. You don't have to tell me which one is your favorite. But, what's the biggest lesson that you learned from any of them, working with any?
There's still, no matter where you go as a woman, you still have difficulties. That's the biggest lesson, I think. And I think there's a lot of nationalism, right? When you go work with different cultures and whether you're working with the Japanese or you're working, I worked with the Germans, I worked with the Dutch,
the Spanish,
the Spaniards, and everybody kind of has their own, kind of little club, right? And if you're not part of that club, so now you're dealing kind of like, okay, whether you're dealing with your female glass ceiling or you're not part of the club, but there's always something, right? So I think, again, it teaches you to just have a harder, tougher skin, and it teaches you to just be adaptable and just, figure out how to work, your way around solutions, and you get pretty creative trying to get things done.
Wow, that's amazing. What a lesson. And to celebrate this month, I wanna toast to all the women in our lives, the women who have been mentors, sponsors, our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, and also to those that have made it difficult, because that's why we're here. So cheers to all the women in our lives, celebrating International Women's Month. And the conversation doesn't end here for us. So we have a second episode that we will be recording soon, where we're going to be addressing other set of topics and issues that we face as women in the workplace. So for just this episode, Feli, what message do you want to leave for our audience? So Feli, the conversation does not end here. We have a couple of more episodes that we'll be recording soon over the next couple of weeks. What closing message do you want to leave for our audience today?
I would say, don't do it by yourself. Don't do what I did. I think that's the harder route. And, plan your career out. Sit down and take some time to strategize and build a brief around what you really want to do with your career. What are your strengths? What industries you want to focus on? Find yourself a mentor. It's always good to have somebody to bounce ideas off of and to learn from, whether it's an older person, somebody outside of the company, or somebody that's the same age as you, like Andrea. But if you want to do it your own and you want to be the next Felixandra the Great, then that's okay too. If I were to go back to my younger self, I would prefer to help myself with a little bit of an instruction manual. But that would be my best advice.
That's great. Thank you for the gift of your time to Felixandra. Let's wine. Feli, we have a tradition here for all of our guests. If you can honor us with your signature for this wonderful rosé that we just drank. And you are, like I said before, this is our 3 special series, and the conversation will continue and will be ongoing.
This is going to be a very expensive cork.
Yes.
You know that, right? Yeah. The signature is going to be worth millions one day.
Yeah, save it. Yeah, I'm saving it. You do us the honors of putting it inside our...
Absolutely. Cheers.
Let's wine.